Over the weekend, of course, we saw what unfolded with the president of the United States, President Biden, signing this $40 billion Ukrainian military weapons package to push a new round of aid and weapons into Ukraine. Now, what's interesting is President Biden is flying to Japan, and he didn't even have time to sign the bill. Like, it happened so fast that they had to print out a copy of this bill, put it on his Air Force One, so while he's flying to Japan, he could sign it and read over it as if he didn't already know what was in it. Like,
don't they have DocuSign?
I guess, yeah. Like, don't they have like a document,
like
a digital?
In the Smithsonian with, you know how DocuSign has that little at the bottom, the subscript, just like signed on this day on this IP address.
So yes, he signed it on Air Force One. And it is now official. Ukraine is getting $40 billion. And it's amazing to kind of see like some of the response and sort of the immediate response from some of the senators trying to justify this, because they had to go home this weekend, right? They were in their own districts. They were home. They're on recess. So here's Senator Ted Cruz trying to justify his bullshit signing of this bill and support for this bill. Ted Cruz says the reason that we should support our Ukraine allies is because it protects American national security, it keeps America safer, and it prevents our enemies from getting stronger. Do you buy that for a second? How does it help? How is it keeping America safer and preventing our enemies from getting stronger?
I don't follow that.
Okay.
I'm not going to. I mean, it's a big leap, right? Because the idea is that there is this superpower named Russia that will bleed through to the rest of the world and make us, and eventually get to your doorstep, right? That's what we're supposed to think, although the geography doesn't necessarily support that.
So should we go through the bill? We should dive through and go through what's in this beast, because there is a lot to get to here. And it's interesting to look at the $40 billion and how much this is broken down. And it's actually very difficult. If you read like a lot of Western media, you're not going to get a lot of information, some of the nuance that's in this bill. You actually have to go away from Western media and you have to go to like other countries. You have to go away from American media to actually find out what's in this bill.
Right. I mean, and remember that Congress could not pass the Build Back Better package at the end of last year, which means that tax rates were not increased, right? So the government does not have increased revenue to pay for these packages that it wants, not internal social packages domestically, and certainly not external spending packages. So these same people who voted against the affordability of other social programs all signed on the dotted line for something that means war.
Yeah, so let's go through some of the package here. The package includes $9 billion, $9 billion for economic support fund for Ukraine, other countries affected by the conflict. So it's giving $9 billion for refugees. At the same time, it literally just admitted that it didn't have enough money to fund the United Nations to give money for refugees in Africa. So priorities, right? For U.S. conflict zones in Africa, we can't help you if you're a refugee. What else is in this? The package includes $15 billion for defense operations, $6 billion for Ukrainian security assistance. I don't want to take up all of them.
No. Oh, go ahead. I thought you had a list. So I was
it's
trying
the same
not
list
to
you
interrupt.
have. No, we have $200 million for U.S. State Department diplomacy as well. There's another $110 million for embassy security, construction, and maintenance. Which is interesting because just this afternoon now the president says that he's thinking of sending security forces into the U.S. embassy in Kiev, right? Whereas there is no longer Russian forces in Kiev. The embassy had shut down but is opened back up. And so the idea that there's not boots on the ground, but now that we have this money, we can send in diplomats and we can protect them again. So, that's nuanced, boots on the ground, but still boots on the ground. Right. There's also money for rare earth element minerals. Now, this is amazing. So I want you to think about this for a second. Let me pull up here. I think I have what's in this. Yes, here it is. Buried in the text of the Ukrainian aid package passed by Congress is $600 million to help U.S. defense contractors build missiles faster and procure long-term supplies of rare earth metals used to make advanced weapons. Okay? Now, what's interesting about that is that 90% of all rare earth minerals comes from, can you name the country? Can you name it?
China.
What is it?
China.
It's pronounced China. So they all come from China. And so how does this work? Well, it's interesting. Before this war happens, here's how we got our rare earth minerals. We looked the other way. We said, hey, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, all of you weapons contractors, just don't tell us where you're getting these rare earth minerals because we really don't want to know. We're going to pay you, but just please don't tell us. But a few wily members of Congress actually put forward a bill saying, wait a second, we don't actually want you to get these minerals from China. This was January. Exclusive. U.S. bill would block defense contractors from using Chinese rare earth minerals. Now, what do you think happened to that bill when February hit?
It circled the drain.
Exactly. So now, again, not only did that bill disappear, we now actually have additional money going to these weapons contractors to help them explore even more ways of getting these rare earth minerals. So basically, if you follow the money trail, the money goes from you, the taxpayer, to Washington, from Washington to the defense contractors, to China to get these rare earth minerals to be built in weapons that we will use in Ukraine. And again, we're all lining up to basically go to war with China. So it's amazing how this whole circle works, right?
Right. And so do you think China will continue to supply those weapon components if the war was with them? Like, let me help you hurt me?
No, I mean, this is why, 90% of it all comes from China. And it's just like saying, hey, it's like when Russia, suddenly just cuts off gas to Finland. It's like, oh, wait a minute, you're going to join NATO? So sorry, we're done sending you gasoline.
Right.
Like, we're sorry. And that's exactly what's going to happen with China if it already hasn't happened. I mean, that's why we're putting in stores and, working towards other operations in Africa and other places of trying to get rare earth minerals right now.
Now, this is not a tragedy, right? But they're doing this under the Defense Production Act, saying that any company that's making weapons or anything that we need for this war effort is going to be able to skip the line for the supply chain. That means that the rest of us who are in line to buy things that are, say, a car or an electronic, right, will have to get to the back of the line. Again, it's a first world problem, but it does say that, it will curb economic growth domestically. So you can't sort of flaunt this America first ethos if you're taking Americans and putting them at the back of the line for a war they may not necessarily support.
What's also interesting too is if you think about what was missed in this whole thing over the past few days is that over the weekend we actually had, and I had a full screen. I was trying to see if I could pull it up here if I had it. Oh yeah, here it is. It didn't get transferred. Sometimes the formatting. Oh no, it didn't show up. It was a JPEG and it didn't show up. Anyway, on the very same day that they passed this $40 billion Ukrainian package, they also, Congress voted down a $28 billion small business and aid package to the American people.
Yeah,
on the same day. Just who are you in Congress that you can sit there and say, I do not support helping? And yes, we can all certainly have a longer discussion about each of these bills and go through the nuances of each of these bills. But if you take them at face value, no one read this weapons package deal to Ukraine. None of them. So they're going to sit there and say, well, we need to know what's in this bill. And then here's one bill that literally would help small businesses in America and help families in America. And we're going to vote against it, like on the same freaking day.
I mean, I suppose they think that small businesses are doing just fine, right? Because they look at macroeconomics and who's talking? They look at macroeconomics and they see that big businesses are fine. Right. So they sort of apply that to small businesses. It's very myopic, or they're not paying attention.
Here it is. Senate passes $40 billion Ukraine aid package on the same 5/19/2022. And 2 hours later, on the Hill, Senate blocks $48 billion aid packages for restaurants and other small businesses. I said $28 billion. Look at that.
Oh my gosh.
Look at the timestamp. 2 hours apart.
And that's just somebody's feed. That's ridiculous.
That's the Hill. That's the Hill newspaper. It covers Washington.
This just goes to show you who this just goes to show you who they're actually surrounded by in Congress. They're not surrounded by American citizens. They don't ever see us. They're surrounded by so when they look around, they're like, everybody's doing fine. It's like we can have all this money we can give to the industrial military complex, and all these businesses are doing great. because look at the people that are around me. They're giving me money. You know,
Yeah.
that's...
Or if they hang out in Washington, D.C., all those businesses are doing just fine. So they don't see it, right? It's such an insulated environment. Washington, D.C. is booming. I mean, businesses everywhere, construction everywhere. Everyone's having to move even further and further out into Maryland and Virginia because housing is just so expensive. So D.C. is doing fantastic.
But it's also a matter of how they present this to American voters. And so, you know, even the surveys that we see, sort of Pew Research surveys or Reuters surveys or Associated Press surveys, ask, do you support pushing back against Russia if Russia invades? Or it's not like, do you support any kind of conflict mitigation? It's really like, if Russia is the aggressor, then, right? So it puts sort of the voter at odds with what they may or may not support if they would otherwise be prone to peace.
Right, and here's President Biden on these on this new Ukraine aid package, sending these additional weapons right now. Here's how his announcement about it. Let's listen.
We're in a critical window now, and the United States and our allies and partners are moving as fast as possible to continue to provide Ukraine the forces that they need, the weapons they need, the equipment they need. Their forces need to defend their nation. That's
clear, right? So their forces, our forces, he can't even keep them straight. Their forces, I know we have, I don't know, do we have a number of forces there? I think we have now, according to new data, if I can find my picture here, 18,000 troops. U.S. has sent about 18,000 troops to reinforce Eastern European countries in NATO since the war began. They're bolstered by additional German, British, and Canadian forces. But make no mistake about it, the United States is fully there. Like United States sending forces. And you just mentioned the special forces going to free up to make sure the embassy is taken care of.
Yes, special forces, which I assume means contractors, not necessarily military personnel, but they're not clear about that at this point.
I mean, special forces are special forces. U.S. Special Forces means U.S. Special Forces, right? Unless they're a retired special force, then they become a military contractor, and then they're still paid as such. Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. You know, we've been banned, we've been blocked, we've been censored. That's why we started our own website, to stay connected with you for free.
That's right. So head on over to redacted.inc and make sure you're connected with us. You can sign up again at redacted.inc, not .com.